T'Challa the Black Panther in Sundown Town Chapter 1. The gold book spine of the revolt against civilization was prominent in Addison Blackburn's hands. He sat in a 100-years-old wooden chair, and behind him were two replicas of the Roman fascia symbols from the U.S. House of Congress. His Melita with their Thor's hammer armbands, military paraphernalia, and body armor guarded him with laser rifles. T'Challa and Mute sat across from Blackburn while coffee and butter biscuits were placed on the table in between them by a maid. Two other books were on the table, the Stanford Binet IQ Tests of Whites and Negroes and the Principles of Human Intelligence by David Hume. "Do you prefer if I call you by Luke Charles or T'Challa?" asked Blackburn. "T'Challa," replied the Black Panther. "It has been so long since you came to West Crest County," said Blackburn. "What brings you back? Tell Mute about what you saw your father and uncles do to the two Negroes when you were 9 years old," said T'Challa. "So Mute is your name. That will explain why your mouth is sewn up like that. Well, Mr. Mute, my pa and uncles caught these undermen who harassed Mr. Kessel's daughter at his bakery. The undermen were beaten up with baseball bats, their hands and feet were bounded with barbed wire, and they were chain-tied to the back of a pickup truck which was driven through the streets of the town, and the undermen dragged behind the pickup. Then the truck stopped off in the underman quarters or shacks where their community lived outside of town. My father told all the undermen there this was the price they would pay for terrorizing white civilization, and my uncles doused the tied-up undermen with kerosene and lit them on fire. Not an underman onlooker dared to intervene as their kind cried out as the flames ate through their flesh. What remained of the bodies were taken as souvenirs by the whites in the town. Pictures were taken, and I even have one in my photo album. It was one of the best memories of my childhood," said Blackburn. "Was there any evidence to corroborate Mr. Kessel's daughter's claim?" asked T'Challa. "Only her word, and that was good enough. The whites never had a problem with any underman from that time as far as I remember," replied Blackburn. "Well, that will be all," said T'Challa. "Aren't you staying for coffee?" asked Blackburn. "It's almost 6 o'clock," replied T'Challa. "May I ask the profession of Mr. Mute?" asked Blackburn. "He thinks he is a demented killer of innocent people, as he has been touched by a great evil from birth, so I wanted him to meet an evil greater than himself," answered T'Challa. "An evil backed by science," said Blackburn, and tapped his knuckle on the Revolt Against Civilization book. Moments later T'Challa and the telepathic Mute walked out of the elderly man's estate and strolled into the adjacent suburban area. Mute was vexed that T'Challa had embarrassed him in front of the strangers. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" asked Mute. "Yes, because you are not the only demonically touched person crawling around on the earth." The sun was setting, and T'Challa checked his watch, which indicated that 6 o'clock was seconds away. "Do you like this community?" "The houses are nice," said T'Challa. "If you were born in America as a Negro, deeds of covenant would debar you from owning any of these homes because they can only be sold to whites. This is a white-controlled enclave of civilization." "I am a Wakandan, not a Negro," said Mute. "Your skin is black, therefore to them you are an underman, and as such you are a natural threat to civilization. It does not matter if you are from Wakanda." "You seem to be friends with Blackburn," said Mute. "In my early days I spent time in America as a substitute teacher under the alias Luke Charles at an inner-city school. There I discovered that the school was marginalized at the state administration level based on so-called scientific findings from Stanford Binet IQ philosophies. The state administration turned a blind eye to another scientific study by Dr. Martin D. Jenkins that showed Negroes with IQ scores of 180 and 200. So I investigated the matter, which led me to the Dragon Circle Committee and to their chairman Blackburn. After some forceful persuasion I could only get him to change the policy for my school, not the thousands of schools that should have been freed from his thumb." "You roughed him up, and yet he acts so formal with you," said Mute. He knows that I am stronger than him, and so does his security team. However, he views himself as human and me as an animal. An animal being an animal only cements his beliefs that the underman are emotional beings incapable of refined and strategic long-term thinking. Long-term thinking is his safety net in his mind, because I could kill him but not the book, The Revolt Against Civilization. The beliefs in that book is the real leader of the Dragon Circle. It is a code, and that is very hard to kill, said T'Challa. What does this have to do with me? You promised that I will get to kill people, said Mute. So you shall, if you truly believe you can be that evil, said T'Challa. 6 o'clock chimed on T'Challa's watch and a siren blared in the suburb. There is a law in West Crest County that used to be visible on a sign coming into here. The law is no underman should be here after 6 o'clock when the sun goes down, said T'Challa. The 5 sentinels were invisible to the normal human eye but not to T'Challa's hyper senses. Their hands were shaped like stabbing tools. The heads were literally one large mechanical eyeball that viewed everything panoramically. They walked on insulated legs that made no sound as they snuck up on Mute, who was a dwarf in the presence of the 9 feet tall killers. The Green Book for Negro travelers would warn motorists not come into West Crest County as suspicious murders of black people had occurred there. T'Challa imagined the lives lost across the country due to sundown towns like West Crest. T'Challa also became invisible and asked Mute, "You are about to be killed like the victims you want hurt. How does it feel to be powerless, defenseless, and without a prayer?" Chapter 2. Like all Wakandans, Mute was taught basic martial arts as a child. He would later refine his skills at the Red Rock Academy for Wakandan mutants, so T'Challa expected him to outmaneuver the Sentinels for at least 4 minutes before they killed him. But T'Challa had to get the point across to Mute that being a self-proclaimed sociopath and psychopath meant nothing in the world outside of Wakanda. West Crest would be the first stop in a tour of the evils that operated in plain sight and in the full parameters of the laws created and managed by them. Blackburn's Dragon Circle sat on both the assembly and the executive branch of the county. The Sentinels were given to the county by infiltrators in the administrative divisions of S.H.I.E.L.D. because a minor bunker was built near the suburb. Legally, the robots were there to protect the military asset and civilians in case of a planetary invasion by aliens or if America was attacked. Mute cleverly dodged and weaved his way to the fire hydrant on the curb and made the attackers inadvertently destroy it. Water spewed up and doused the robots, which made them visible to the naked eye. Suddenly a S.H.I.E.L.D. jet roared overhead and a man jumped out of it. He nimbly landed on top of an electricity pole and then somersaulted off of it to land between Mute and the Sentinels. Steve Rogers held up his shield and the robots paused. Time seemed to stop and booster rockets appeared beneath the feet of the Sentinels and the robots flew into the sky and out of view. Captain America asked Mute if he was okay, but the mutant swiftly took over his mind. "Release him," ordered T'Challa as he decloaked. "I will not say it twice." "Do you think you can reach me before I snap his mind?" asked Mute, but T'Challa held him around the neck before all the words escaped his mouth. A claw from the Panther's glove was precariously over Mute's eye. Okay, I released him," said Mute. Captain America's eyes no longer shined and he blinked. "What is going on here, T'Challa?" asked Rogers. The Black Panther had many answers, like how the author of The Revolt Against Civilization was praised by the United States President Herbert Hoover in 1924 when Rogers was 6 years old. That Captain America fought against the Red Skull and Hydra overseas while Sundown's towns flourished in all corners of America. That Blackburn liked Captain America because he was deemed to be from the Nordic, Alpine, and Mediterranean stocks or gene pools which were considered pure-blood whites. But T'Challa did not have the time. "This is a Wakandan military training exercise," replied T'Challa. "In a civilian area. The civilians are being used as human shields, but that is besides the point," stated T'Challa. How were you alerted? The Defense Secretary said that there was a fluid situation that required my involvement, replied Captain America. There is no fluid situation, just a flex of power by the owners of this county, said T'Challa as he released Mute. I don't follow, said Captain America. All pretenses aside, you cannot conduct an unsanctioned military maneuver in America. Yes, I can, because Wakanda Design Group pays US taxes that funds S.H.I.E.L.D. or better yet, let me take you to a town that the group just purchased, said T'Challa, and the trio disappeared from the street. Chapter 3 T'Challa invented the Quinjets for the Avengers, and they were manufactured by the Wakanda Design Group in New Jersey, but the plant was recently moved to a northern town in the United States to avert a takeover of the town's charter. Stark Industries built a factory in the state, and the legislative arm wanted to run a highway through a predominantly black town to reach the factory. The town's governing body asked the politician Luke Cage for help, and he in turn asked T'Challa to move the Wakanda Design Group to the town, which increased the value of the land. The state was forced to build the highway around the town to avoid a substantial payout to the Wakanda Design Group and the residents. T'Challa explained the situation to Captain America and Mute in the strange craft that traveled along a stream near the town. The craft was in the middle of a force field, and the force field rolled like a clear marble on the water and rocks. The craft was shaped like a royal house of Wakanda masonry. Luke is amassing quite a reputation in the political circles, said Captain America. He deserves it, and he will make a good mayor for New York, said T'Challa. Why are you even involved in this country in this way? No wonder you were blind to my needs in Wakanda, said Mute. The people in West Crest consider themselves good people who have built a civilization called the Western civilization, and inclusion to that civilization requires certain genetic traits. Wakanda is a problem for Western civilization because our genetic traits destroys the myths created to build places like West Crest. The book by David Hume that you saw on Blackman's table was the basis of one of the myths, and we undermined it. In regards to you, I am out in the world fighting to keep these people's influence from penetrating Wakanda while you are undermining me with degenerative behavior, said T'Challa. I am sick, said Mute. No, you are immature, but not for long, said T'Challa. As for you, Captain, our meeting tonight will not be wasted. I want you to turn your attention to my next stop with Mute, which is the Advance Idea Dynamic Portal to the Zombieverse. Captain America's jaw dropped because of the seriousness of the threat. Next story, Eminent Domain.